What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or follow us on Twitter @rewatchpod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
And welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I'm Super Strength Alka-Seltzer. Perfect for those times when you had too much bad Chinese or, a bomb. Gotta take care of that, indigestion.
Yeah, it's a bit rough.
You think it was rough going down. Wait till it comes out. All right.
Well, thank you for joining us, everyone, here at episode 1 of our Lois and Clark Rewatch.
Finally, we're here.
We're here. Okay, so the headline today, the episodes we're talking about, it's the pilot. A feature-length pilot.
Yep.
But before we get into it, we'll get a little bit of a follow-up on our episode 0.
Yeah, we actually don't... I didn't expect to have any follow-ups, for this, but then I thought I forgot to mention something, that I have a connection to the character of Perry White.
Ooh.
Yes. Now, this is kind of a little bit off the... It's not exactly... You're not going to be able to find it anymore. Okay, because we got in a little bit of trouble. But basically, back in 2005, I got involved with a voice acting group, amateur voice acting group online. It was with a James Bond audio drama that they were doing. I got involved with that and started doing the voices for one of the characters. Actually, I did the voice of James Bond. Shortly after that, a role came up in one of their other shows, and it was the role of Perry White. And the guy who had played Perry White, he got too much going on in real life, and he had to stop. And so I auditioned for the part of Perry White, and I got to play Perry White in this fan audio drama of Superman.
Cool.
Which, like you think, all right, well, it's a fan audio thing, not that great. But the thing was, these guys were actual, real writers. They're working out in L.A., and they were just huge fans of Superman, and they didn't like what was going on in the comics, like the way he was being portrayed. So they wanted to come up with their own storylines, and they did. And Superman was the first one they did, and it ran for 50-some episodes. So that's, what's that, almost 2 years? Or maybe it was a little more than that. It might have been, I think it was close to 3 years. And they had offshoots from that. They had a Batman show, a Wonder Woman show. They had a short Green Arrow show, a Supergirl show. It led into, an Indiana Jones show, which I actually mixed together. I was the audio engineer on that. A Star Wars show. There was a Star Trek show. It was just amazing, the amount of fan work we were putting out. It's not like it was amazingly hugely popular, but it had a pretty good download audience, every month, huge numbers. And eventually, somehow, DC got wind of it, and a letter was sent to the people in charge, and they talked to a lawyer, and the lawyer said, yeah, you probably want to take all this stuff down, because this is not a fight that you want to do, because you're
cease and desist.
Exactly, which I understand and everything, but it was sad because it was a lot of good stuff in there. I really enjoyed playing Perry. It was a good mix of Lane Smith is what I put in there to his delivery, but then my own little take on it as well. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to do, and like I said, it'd probably be impossible to find out there now because we had to take down links everywhere. They had to wipe it clean, lest we get in trouble and have to go through litigation and all that.
Yeah, it's always weirded me out when these companies go after fan stuff like that.
Yes.
Oh well, but still pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. If you ever come visit me, anybody ever come visit me, I have some recordings here that I can play just as we're hanging out, but can't distribute online. So there you go.
All right, well, let's get into our discussion of the pilot for Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman. This was written by Deborah Joy Levine and directed by Robert Butler. And this originally aired on September 12th of 1993.
I'm sure that these are fascinating stories. But you see, son, this is the Daily Planet. We're the greatest newspaper in the whole world. Now, our people, are dedicated servants of the Fourth Estate who routinely handle matters of international significance.
All right, Chief, I fixed the horn on your golf cart.
Not now, Jimmy.
The tone's still off.
Oh, Jimmy, not now. Now, as I was saying, you just can't walk in here with those
I think there's a story here, and we should have this guy checked out. You know, the crazy one from this morning. He was an engineer at EPRAD for 10
Lois,
years.
can't you see I'm in the middle of something here?
Oh,
Lois Lane, Clark Kent.
nice to meet you. Anyway, he worked on the Messenger.
Wait a minute. What happened to that mood piece I gave you about the raising of that old theater on 42nd Street?
I wasn't in the mood.
You weren't in the mood. Now look, Lois, you can't come in here and tell me you're not in it.
I'll catch you later.
I'll tell you, if that woman wasn't the best damn investigative reporter I've ever seen, Oh, look, Kent, I'm sure that you're an intelligent guy, but you just can't walk in here with this kind of resume and expect to get a job.
Mr. White, I know I lack experience, but I'm a good writer and a hard worker, and
I just don't have anything for you, son.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate your taking the time to see me.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh.
We begin with Lois returning from yet another successful undercover stint as an investigative reporter, with Clark Kent arriving shortly thereafter, having just saved in his civilian street clothes a group of people from being hit by a runaway bus. Perry admits that while Kent may be a talented writer, there's just not a spot open at the Planet. While Lois wants to take on the bigger, more explosive headline-style stories, Kent takes the initiative and covers a story Perry wanted her to do, which impresses him enough to give Kent a job. Together, Lois and Clark attend Lex Luthor's charity ball, in which he announces that he has proposed his own space station, hoping to help after the latest space shuttle mission by an organization called EPRAD to create a space station failed, due to what one engineer claimed was sabotage, but in general is considered to be mechanical failure. We soon learn that the head of EPRAD, Claire Baines, is literally in bed with Lex Luthor, working to make sure that the official mission fails so that Lex can get his own station in place, putting him in an even higher position of power. Lois and Jimmy investigate further, but are caught and held captive by Baines while Clark arrives to save the day, but can't without exposing his powers. Baines plans to escape while Lois, Clark, and Jimmy are killed in an explosion, but Clark uses his strength to escape and pull Lois and Jimmy to safety. Baines escapes in a helicopter, but is also killed when it explodes, the result of being in business with Lex Luthor. EPRAD's mission is rescheduled after Baines is revealed to be the saboteur, and Lois sneaks on board to get the scoop. Meanwhile, Clark gets help from his mother in creating an outfit that will make him unrecognizable so that he can help and use his powers without being discovered who he really is, something that is put to the test when a bomb is discovered aboard the EPRAD shuttle. Clark uniquely disarms the bomb, and rather than let the mission be scrubbed, carries the shuttle into orbit, successfully getting them into orbit at the space station. While Lois is immediately enamored by the superpowered alien do-gooder she christens Superman, Lex is less impressed after he is paid a visit by him, in which Superman says that he knows who Luthor is, what he did to the space station, and the people who were killed along the way, and he will find a way to bring him to justice as he flies up, up, and away.
Forget how beautiful it is here. The only stars you see in Metropolis are riding around in limos.
You're the one who wanted the rat race. I couldn't live there. Not for a minute.
There's something about the city. The pace. Everyone going somewhere.
Impatient. Like you. Well, I guess you finally found your niche. Stop living out of that old suitcase.
I hope so, Dad. Being in Metropolis, working at the Planet, it's a dream come true, but...
But you still feel like you don't fit in.
Because I don't. I don't fit in. I have to control myself all the time. Never use my powers because I don't want to jeopardize my chance to lead a normal life.
Whatever that means.
Just being human. Like you and Mom. Living, working, meeting someone, having a family.
Clark, we don't know if that's possible. And you can't risk anyone finding out about you. They knew you came from another planet.
But I can't hide forever, Dad. There has to be a way that I can be Clark Kent and still use what I've been given to do some good.
find a way, boy. He'll find a way.
All right, so let's get a little deeper with an investigation of trivia.
Yeah, so in the beginning there, when Clark goes in to talk to Perry about a job, Perry mentions a Professor Carlton. And, you know, it's just a throwaway line. But I like to look, if I can, you know, if I catch it, I like to look and see if there's any reason why they're talking about, you know, certain professors or certain names or certain street names, things like that.
Right.
So I just happened, while I was watching, I looked up Professor Carlton. And Professor Carlton is actually, I mean, it might be a reference to a Superman writer or an artist, but in the comics, there's an actual Professor Carlton that was used in a story. And it was actually a pseudonym used by Lex Luthor. He pretended to be this Professor Carlton that wanted to get his hands on Superman's costume. Basically, something like he told Superman he needs his help in testing his robot or he had some kind of thing that he called Metallo. Now, it's not Metallo like the criminal that we, you know, the supervillain that we know later, but it's something else that this professor had made, and he needed Superman's help in testing this thing, and he had to wear a special suit for it. So, you know, he gave Superman this new special suit and took his old suit. And so Superman went out and tested this whole thing, and the suit was really good, so he kept the suit and was using that one. And it was a weird suit with like this little utility belt type thing, and it had like a bubble around the head, like an astronaut, you know, in the old days would wear. And he apparently really liked it because it was working really well and, you know, helped him do all this stuff. And Luthor was trying to actually kill him by having kryptonite inside the suit. So every time he used it, it would, like, you know, make him weaker and weaker. But what I thought was funny about this, you know, that Luthor was trying to get the suit because the suit was Superman's invincible suit. And I'm like, well, that's not really. His powers come from him, not from the suit. But this was back in the golden age when, you know, things were a little bit less, you know, like they didn't have the continuity that we have today.
Yeah, well, I think they still weave that into the story here and there. I mean, in the Man of Steel, they, you know, came up with this whole like Kryptonian fabric or something that was like, you know, the official garb of the L family or something. And I think Supergirl gets a cape from Superman in the new Supergirl TV series. Yeah.
All right.
And that's supposed to be like, you know, super strong as well or something.
Right. I just figure, you know, like the way I've always seen it explained more realistically in the modern age is that, you know, that his superpowers have this aura around him that prevents the suit from getting destroyed because it's close to his body. That's why the cape can end up getting torn, because it's sort of like flying away from the body. So that's why the suit is always pretty much in shape, but then the rest of it's not. That's the way I've seen it always explained. I thought that was funny that they said, well, the suit is the magic, you know, it's the invincible part of it. It reminded me of that TV show, The Greatest American Hero, where the suit was like, had all the power in it. And like, if someone else wore the suit, they could fly and do all the superpowers as well. Let's see. We also have that Cleveland was mentioned. They said something about an electrical storm over Cleveland, and if I'm not mistaken, that's where Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster lived when they were growing up. The guys who created Superman.
Ah, cool.
So I'm not sure if they meant, you know, if they were doing that on purpose or it was just, you know, they just chose a random place, but. Yeah, it seems like that's where they were from. It seems like that would have been like a neat little aside to put in there.
Yeah, just a little homage to the creators.
Exactly. And the original pilot script began with Clark in New Guinea doing a fire ceremony with the natives there, I guess. So a little bit more reference to how he was like, you know, a world traveler, you know, the whole thing about the pava leaves, you know. So just calling back to that. And Lois was actually going to be in Utah working on a story. And I don't know. It's like Utah working on a story. I don't know how that comes into anything, but I guess they're supposed to show them, you know, not being there in Metropolis, but being out there in the world doing their job.
But it does make more sense that you would want to set up Metropolis, really, to start with.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So now we also got, I thought this was kind of neat, a little tie-in to our podcast here, or your podcast when you're doing the movies. The chairperson of that United Congress is actually the bald Delton from the Star Trek motion picture movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because I was just looking up stuff, and yeah, it mentioned her, and I was like, oh, look at that's what's her name, you know? So there you go. I don't know if this will clear anything up, but there were 3 different versions of this pilot episode when it aired. The first was the 2-hour premiere that aired in September of 1993. Okay, so that's the one that I saw. And then the second was a 2-part version, which aired later in December. Okay, now that version had several scenes that were not seen in the original version. And then there was a third version that was aired in the UK, and that one had scenes that were not previously seen on the other two aired versions. Now, I don't know what the difference, I don't know what the different scenes were. This is just what I found online when people were talking about the pilot. So there were actually a couple different episodes here, edited a little bit differently with some extra parts in one. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I didn't see anywhere that said, well, this was in here but not in there and whatnot. So
well, maybe it was just just a few cut scenes that they got rid of them so it would go to a nice feature-length premiere runtime.
Right.
But if you're going to split it into 2 episodes, then hey, let's just chuck those back in to get to a nice 2-episode runtime.
Oh yeah, exactly, something like that.
So it's probably nothing really. It's probably
Right.
just like padded stuff, stuff that they looked at and thought, oh, okay, well, we don't really need that.
It's just, for the completionist, you might want to try to search those out. You might find a bootleg somewhere out there,
Maybe we'll do a bit of a search on YouTube, see if we can find anything, put it up
Right.
on Facebook or something.
And then finally, the original script had Lex Luthor facing off more than a Cobra. So the Cobra comes in and Lex Luthor turns around, faces it off. And, the original idea was he was going to also fend off a samurai. So a samurai was going to attack him. And also he was going to be dropped in a shark tank. And he was going to be fighting off sharks. That sounds cool. And I could see that happening like in the comics. But I don't know how they would do that on like the show with, limited budget and whatnot.
It's bit of overkill, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I like where they're going with it. And we'll get into that when we get into the discussion. But yeah, I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. But yeah, probably a little bit much for a TV show to do at this point.
Power is a means, not an end.
You took over your first big company when you were 21. There were rumors that buyout was coerced. Is it true that the board of directors were giving
Now, was the food not to your liking?
Oh, it was delicious. It's just that when I work,
All work and no play. Is that your credo, Lois Lane?
Oh, I don't think that we should...
Why don't we just enjoy the evening, enjoy each other, let down your hair, loosen the tie.
Not wearing a tie.
But you're so tense here. Why don't you just let your defenses down?
I think you've gotten the wrong idea about this dinner, Lex.
Look, I hope you don't think that we're here merely because you're, a beautiful young woman. Wouldn't speak very well for either of us. Look, you want an interview, right? A scoop. I understand that. Quid pro quo, let me tell you what I want. My talent in life is not making money. It's not juggling companies. It's character assessment. And I sense things about you. Possibilities, potentials. You have the intelligence, the spirit, and the vision to transcend the mundane. And just so there are no misunderstandings, you are beautiful.
Lex, I have a story to write tonight. I should get going.
No dessert?
No. I never have dessert.
Really? You don't know what you're missing.
All right, so let's get into the main story here. I love that you've made this as the first point here.
Yes.
In our list of things to talk about.
Yep.
The theme song.
Oh, great theme song.
Oh, man. When that theme comes on, I mean, it's very much inspired by the movies.
Yes.
That John Williams theme from the movies, but they've put their own twist on it.
Oh, yeah. When you mentioned that this would be the next show that we were going to do, I was like, oh, yeah. And immediately, in my head, I could hear that theme song. And, even watching, this past week, that song has been in my head constantly. Because it's just easily, sung, whistled. Because I've been whistling it. And it's just been, it gets stuck in my head. I love it. It's, a great start, because sometimes theme songs are not always so great. As we know from Sliders, it's an okay theme song, but it wasn't exactly singable or whistle. You couldn't whistle the tune really. So this one just really it catches you.
Yeah, I've actually been saying it for a few years now, but with the the emergence of comic book movies in the 21st century, like we get so many of them now, not a lot of them have an iconic theme anymore like they used to, like Superman, like Tim Burton's Batman.
Right.
You know, they all had these like themes that you could hum, you could whistle it. And yeah, just not many of them do that anymore. I think like X-Men has like a pretty good theme that goes with it, but outside of that, like none of them really go for that iconic theme anymore. So yeah, it's a great thing to sort of like kick that nostalgia.
Yeah, like I watch The Flash a lot, and that theme song it's not that it's like you can't really hum what's being said beneath the voiceover or whatever. And even like I just watched in preparation for the new movie coming out, I just rewatched Man of Steel this weekend, and the music is great, but it's not exactly the most catchy iconic thing. It's like I hear it and I know, oh yeah, that's the theme from Man of Steel, but it's like to try to sing that, it's impossible to do without 3 or 4 part harmony. It's like, yeah, not gonna work. Can't do that myself.
But we pretty much dive straight into it with Lois returning to the Daily Planet, and I see what they were trying to do. Okay, in that she's dressed, I guess, like a disheveled man, like a construction worker or something, right? And she's got the beanie on, and she's got the goatee, mustache, and beard, as if to say we're going to reveal that this is Lois Lane, but
right, this isn't her. Don't worry, it's not her.
It's that, I don't know, it's that 90s thing of it's very obviously Terry Hatcher. So.
Well, yeah, and she doesn't even say anything until after Jimmy rips off the the goatee and everything. So it's like even before that, she's just sort of nodding her head. It was a little bit awkward.
Yeah, but what they're doing is they're setting her up as the #1 reporter at the Daily Planet.
Yes,
because she's getting mass praise for this huge story that she's broken. She's an investigative reporter. She went in undercover. She got the hard story and revealed this big what was it, some sort of ring of people selling stolen goods or something?
Something like that. Yeah, something like that.
They don't get way into it, but she's broken a huge story. That's the main point. They set up a few people here, including Perry and Jimmy as well.
Yes.
Perry's set up as that hard-nosed newspaper man, and Jimmy is the small fish. He's the one who is trying to show initiative, but Perry's just don't underestimate the need for a good obituary, Jimmy. Get on it.
I know. I love it.
So, it's really good, the introduction of these characters here.
Oh, yeah, it's great. I mean, you get them all really quickly. The only one you don't get really is Clark, because he's coming, within a few minutes here. But, yeah, you get Clark, you get Jimmy, you get Kat, you get all these people, And I love, Lane Smith is just awesome. When I first saw this show, I forget when My Cousin Vinny came out, if it was before this or after that. But I hadn't known who he was, and so my first introduction to Lane Smith was right here as Perry, and I was like, oh, he's perfect, It's like the perfect Perry White. I felt fine with Perry in the movies with Christopher Reeve. He was fine, even back in the 1950s, the George Reeves thing. Perry was fine in there, very bombastic and everything. But this one, the way Lane Smith did it was just a perfect mix of all the Perrys I could think of. It was great. I loved his character.
Yeah, this edge of southernness to him.
Mm-hmm.
What is it, like a Tennessee accent or something like that?
Yeah, it actually reminds me of Bones in Star Trek a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, and of course, they're going to get into it more as the show goes on. He's also got this massive Elvis fixation as well. So
oh yeah,
it's a cool little edge for the character. Sort of just mixing it up a little bit to make him a bit more unique from the way we've seen him before.
Yeah, definitely.
And you mentioned Cat Grant as well. Now, Cat Grant, she's currently on TV in the Supergirl show, being played by Callista Flockhart.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. I was like, wait, really? She is? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, she is. She's played by
not Tracy Scoggins, but the character Cat Grant. But in that, this is years after Superman had been established once Supergirl had shown up. So in that show, Cat Grant is she owns her own media empire, and she's her own hard-nosed reporter. Here, they play her as this gossip columnist who's man-hungry.
Right.
But Tracy Scoggins, I think she takes the character and plays that gossipy woman to a T.
I like the character of Cat Grant here. I know she was in the comics. I don't really know too much about her character in the comics. I know when I was reading the comics around this time when this aired, I sort of, like she was in there, but I never paid much attention to her. But I like the way Tracy Scoggin plays her. Love Tracy Scoggin. She's beautiful, gorgeous. I mean, oh my God. When this came out, I was like in high school. I was like a senior in high school. So I'm like, oh man, Cat Grant. But I'm not a fan of Cat Grant in the Supergirl TV show. That's a whole nother conversation, but yeah, I don't. Anyway, moving on. Because believe me, we could go off on hours on that. But
yeah, but like you said, we set up these people at the Daily Planet, but then Clark Kent comes into it. This is an interesting spot to pick up from in the show.
Mm-hmm.
Clark's arrival in Metropolis and him meeting Lois Lane for the first time. And he's not even Superman yet. Like, that doesn't even come until the end of the episode. They really set up Lois and Clark. That's what the show is about, That's what they want to tell us from the get-go, that this is the Lois and Clark story, not the Lois and Clark and Superman story.
Exactly.
Although,
that's a big difference.
Superman is going to be a big part of it. I mean, why would he not be? But the focus of the show is on the Lois and Clark relationship. So that's what makes this really cool.
When he first gets introduced to Lois, this actually, it kind of pays homage to the Christopher Reeve movie where he first meets Lois as well. Like, she comes in, sort of just dismisses him, She comes in, Perry's trying to open the bottle or something, and Lois comes in, opens it right away for him, and it's a neat little, I think, tribute to that film.
Yeah, and I think it's cool that they do the whole thing about him being a world traveler. Perry's going through his resume and he's like, the Borneo Gazette, like, what's going on? And, he's talking about power leaves and, he's very worldly. And it makes you think, like, yeah, man, like, if you could travel faster than the speeding bullet and fly, why would you not be a world traveler?
Exactly. You can go anywhere. Why not?
Exactly.
So, yeah, it's good.
So obviously Clark, after he finished school, he flew around the world a bit. He went and did some stuff. Yeah. Like, he doesn't have to pay for it or nothing.
Exactly, because you just fly home at the end of the night, No one's going to say anything. You don't have to find a hotel to stay in. You don't really need much money. You can just go and, experience the world.
Exactly. And they set his powers up, too, at the beginning. And this, what they're going to lead to with him wanting to find a way to help people with his abilities, but still have a normal life as Clark Kent as well. So that's, again, set up right at the beginning. There's this out-of-control bus. Strangely enough, the bus is going to career into a group of women, children, nuns, and the elderly.
Yes. Exactly.
I guess what are deemed like the most helpless people in society, not to degrade women or anything like that, but it's just to say that it's women, children, nuns, and the elderly. I mean, come on, that would be the biggest tragedy ever. So I did have a laugh at that.
Oh yeah, it's very amusing, especially when his handprint is left in the bus and the woman's like, that man.
Yeah, the whole thing about people seeing him, it happens again later as well. So he does have a meeting with Perry, who doesn't hire him. He thanks him for being cordial and everything, shakes his hand, nearly breaks his hand. I thought that was really funny. Yeah, he doesn't get hired straight away, The Perry kind of just looks at him and goes, okay, so you've been doing all this stuff around the world, but this is the Daily Planet.
Exactly.
This is hard-hitting stuff, so I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah, and that's when Jimmy comes in and says, I fixed the wheel or brakes on your golf cart or something like that. Yeah. Hard-hitting stuff. Hey, your golf cart's ready.
He does take the initiative, though, because he gets the drop thing about, Lois, why aren't you out doing this thing at the theater that's being torn down? And she's like, no, I want to be doing all this hard-edge stuff. So he kind of just takes that story and runs with it.
She doesn't really get in much trouble either. She just does, she does what she wants, and she has the, she has the experience and the awards, to back it all up. It's like, hey, I'm getting you the big stories here, so just let me do this,
Yeah, and this crazy guy busts in to the planet, and he's dragged off because, he's carrying on like a lunatic. And Lois thinks there might be something to it, so she checks out what this guy was screaming about was the space program, this messenger shuttle that is heading up to the space station Prometheus. She's going to get in there and try to figure this out. So Clark ends up, he's back at this hotel, which is like the worst looking hotel ever.
Yeah.
And he's on the phone with his parents. And I think this is something we're going to see time and again, is him making phone calls to his parents. And they've got 2 phones on their end and he's talking to them. And it shows that his home life with his parents is very loving.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so we all know the story. Like, they found him as a boy and raised him as their own and stuff like that. But I think here, the way they convey the relationship between Clark and his parents, I just love it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The Christopher Reeve movies, you know, his father died, you know, when he was in high school or whatever. And, you know, his mother is still a part of his life, but they don't really, like, she doesn't really play a big part in his career. Like, once he goes off to Metropolis, you know, Christopher Reeve, it's like she's not really a big part of his story going forward, you know. And of course, in the old TV shows and stuff like that, they're not even really mentioned at all. So this is the first time that we get, you know, really his parents being a continual part of his life, and you get to see, you know, the decisions that Superman makes. You could see where they come from his upbringing, you know, from these two, you know, very important people. So it's kind of cool to see this, because that's how it was in the comics that I was reading. His parents were both still alive and part of his life. So it was great to see this on screen.
Yeah, you know, I think that they have done a really good job of updating this to be in the 90s. You know, from the source material, they have to update it to the 90s. So it has this noir overtone to it, but it's still very strongly set in the 90s. You know, it's set up with Lois, the strong, independent woman, and all that. But then, you know, the relationship with the parents, Clark's in his, mid-20s, mid to late 20s now.
Right.
But he's still, you know, calling his parents. His parents are still willing to send him money and things like that. You know, it's kind of, you know, the way society has gone. You know, it's, you see it in the news all the time now, you know, kids staying at home with their parents longer.
Right.
So, you know, it is that updated thing, you know. Yeah, sure, he's in his mid-20s, but he's lived with his parents right up until that time, even though he traveled a bit.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's not like it's beneath him or something like that to accept money from his parents.
Oh yeah, and I love the two actors. Is it Kay Callan and Eddie Jones, right?
Yeah.
I love the job that they do as the parents. I mean, they're just fabulous. I haven't seen her in much at all. I think I saw her. She was in an episode of Quantum Leap in which she played a not great character. Like, she was kind of mean, and I was like, oh, come on, Mrs. Kent, what are you doing? You know, it's like, you can't be like that. That's not how Superman, you know. And like, when I see her dad, or I see his dad, Eddie Jones, I see him in a lot of different little bit parts here and there. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Clark's dad. I love it. You know, I think they did a great job. Love watching them on screen. Whenever they're on there, it's like awesome.
Yeah. They characterize it very well.
Oh yeah,
and definitely play off each other very well. But you know, we get a bit of trickery here, because Clark's just sitting in his hotel room doing nothing. He's a bit bored. He doesn't know anybody in town.
Right.
And he starts floating up to change the light bulb and walking around on the walls and the roof.
The walking around thing I could have done without. That was a little cheesy.
Well, the rotating room effect thing is something that's been beaten to death at this point.
Yes, yeah.
It's a cheap effect, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I get them showing the whole floating up, because that's one of his main powers. But like, walking on walls is not really something he does a lot. So,
yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't he just fly or float up like he did the first time? Yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, you know, I guess for the effect, you know, for the visual, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, they want to do stuff. You know, they want to show you that, you know, he's got these abilities, even though most people know Superman's powers. Like, they are telling ostensibly an origin story here, so they need to set this stuff up. He's got these abilities.
Right.
But, you know, Lois ends up heading home. Her sister Lucy is staying with her. And again, we're getting that 90s thing. Like, even though she's this strong, independent 90s woman, she doesn't have a boyfriend. She is getting ditched by guys for dates.
Yes.
Her sister's telling her that, hey, look, you should be going to, you know, Lex Luthor's ball. Maybe you'll find a super guy, quote unquote.
Yes.
And she's like that 90s woman, like, I don't need no man. I don't want no scrub. You know? That's what the 90s was all about. But, of course, we cut to her eating ice cream and watching the soaps that she's recorded.
Right, yeah.
Crying herself to sleep. She does want a guy. She wants to meet a super guy.
Which, I mean, you know, I think that's fine. That's fine because, you know, obviously this is supposed to be the story of Lois and Clark, a romance story between the two of them. So I think, like, realistically, the character of Lois, like, in the end, she would have cared less if she had a guy to go to the ball with. She just would have went on her own. You know, like, that's who she is. Like, in the comics, that's what she would have done, I think. I don't think she would have been, you know, but they want to set up, of course, you know, that, you know, she does want to meet someone. So, yeah.
For the reason that she wants to go to the ball as well is to try and woo Lex Luthor and get that interview because he's notoriously reclusive.
Exactly.
So, yeah, why would she need a date? But you're right. For the purposes of the story, we are setting up that maybe she is a bit lonely. She does want to meet somebody.
Right.
But, you know, Clark heads off to the theater that's being demolished, and he ends up saving a woman. This old woman, she's inside and she's sort of, you know, recounting her days of being on the stage. And he ends up sabotaging the wrecking ball from knocking the place down while she's in there. And then he goes inside and meets her and talks to her and gets her story and writes a very heartfelt piece about it that Perry is very enamored with.
Yes.
Again, they try to do this effect of him writing the story. So he's typing it out like super fast, so fast that the computer overheats. So again, it's kind of, you know, the super quick effect is literally just, you know, they had Dean Cain typing away for 5 minutes and then sped it up to be 30 seconds of footage instead. I think we're going to see this time and again. I mean, it's 1993. The effects aren't going to be excellent, but they're working with what they got, and I'm going with it.
Yeah, no, it was fine. I thought it was amusing. You know, I expected to see something like that. It's just like in today's, like, The Flash show, when he's doing something real fast, like when he's reading real fast or something like that, and the pages get ripped or they, you know, start to burn or whatever because he's going so fast. It's that type of thing. So, yeah, it fits. It fits.
Of course, you know, the space shuttle launch goes ahead, and that backfires. Lois and Clark end up getting teamed together. Lois immediately is like, you know, you're working for me. You're not working with me.
Right.
And Lois is thinking sabotage, of course. So they go to see the crazy guy who turns out to be this guy, Dr. Platt, and he tells them his theories of sabotage, but he still seems pretty crazy, right?
Yeah, he does. He does. I like the actor, though. He's been in a bunch of different things. Like I've seen him in bit parts here and there. I can't recall anything at the time, but I know I've seen him in other things as well from this era.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job, you know, when he talks about how he put in a report about what was going on. It was something to do with heating units and cooling units or something. They'd been replaced. So pretty much it would do the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. Hence, the shuttle would explode. And they asked to see this report, and he's got it strewn around his room on little post-it notes and things behind all kinds of stuff. I thought it was actually pretty funny.
No, it was good. It was very good. Well done.
And it was, and of course it leads them to, like, can we trust this guy? His report was scribbled down on tiny bits of paper that he kind of threw all over the place. Exactly. But it leads them to the head of the project, Dr. Baines.
Yes.
And, of course, she claims that she never got any report or anything like that. She doesn't know. She's, like, super standoffish. For Lois, at least. Of course, Clark comes in and he's like, well, you know, we'd very much appreciate it if you could help us. She's, oh, maybe I can work something out for you.
Twirling her hair, you know.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it's that first inkling, I guess, of maybe a tad bit of jealousy sort of starting to break through.
Exactly. Because she has no interest really in Clark at all, you know. They do have that neat little back and forth when she's, like you said, she's saying she's in charge, and there's a little back and forth where it ends up with him saying, oh, okay, I get it. You like to be on top. That was good. That was good. You know, so they do have that back. You know what? It's when I was looking up behind the scenes stuff, it did say that this was supposed to be like a superhero version of like moonlighting, and that's what I get here. You know, the banter between the two of them. You know that he kind of likes her, but she's sort of like standoffish about him. You know, it's kind of, I do see the parallel there.
Yeah, you know, I did see a thing with Deborah Joy Levine, who is the showrunner here. You know, she was offered to develop a show for Superman on TV, to which she said, you know, I have no idea what Superman is about. Like, I'm not a comic book reader or anything like that. So you could look at that and be like, oh, why would they give it to her then?
Exactly.
But, you know, she pitched the idea of, well, you know, I may not know a lot about Superman, but I can give you a story of Lois and Clark, you know, the love story. So that's really, you know, at the end of the day, that's where they're coming from here. Like I said, this is the Lois and Clark story, and Superman is kind of just weaved into that, you know? It's just a different way of looking at an old story.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that's not what it's been before. You know, it's always been Superman is the focus, you know, and then Clark is sort of there just to fill in little story bits, you know?
And we're going to continue throwing things at Lois and Clark in the form of Cat Grant, of course.
Right, yes.
Because she is really giving the hard sell to Clark about taking her out
Just
to
a
dinner.
little bit.
Yeah. And he's just like, yeah, look, a rain check. I'm still settling in. Like, you can tell that Cat Grant is not his kind of woman.
No, definitely not. He's been around. He knows. He's seen things. He's not dumb.
Yeah, and then Lois's date cancels on her, so she has to like fumble her way into asking Clark to go with her.
Yes.
So yeah, you know, I think that little section of it to sort of set you up for that kind of jealousy that Lois might have, you know. She probably has feelings for him, but you know what? We're not going to develop that too far.
Exactly.
Because we want the show to run as long as we can. So it's going to, it's going to be a cat and mouse game for the foreseeable future, probably.
It's that whole will they, won't they thing.
Exactly. And like we were saying too, like Clark being a world traveler, right? He can just fly to wherever he wants, whenever he wants.
Right.
He just flies home to Kansas to have some dinner with mom and dad.
Yeah, I like this, you know, because it shows that his mother is just not like, you know, in the comics, you know, they were farmers and whatnot. But in this one, it shows that his mother is like, it's a deeper character than just being the wife of a farmer, you know, like she's interested in other things. So they show her as being a budding artist, you know, like she's really interested in making art, you know, so it was kind of neat to see that facet of her character, I guess. It's kind of good to see rather than just being the mother who stays at home and takes care of things.
Again, I think it's that 90s mentality as well. So, you know, his mother grew up throughout that age where, women get married, they have children, you know, stay at home and look after the house, you know, but she has that relationship with her husband, and now they're in the 90s where she's looking at the world and thinking, you know what, I can be a strong woman if I want to be, and if I want to be an artist, well, damn it, I'm going to be an artist.
Exactly.
And of course, you know, his father is just like, your mother is an artiste now, and you know, I haven't had a dinner like this in a long time, you know. But at the end of the day, it's that dynamic. It's making the parents more fleshed out characters, giving them something else that, maybe they haven't had before in the previous incarnations of the story.
Exactly.
But yeah, and, you know, he does have a great moment with his father too, you know, just talking about living in the city, you know, it being so different from Kansas and him wanting to have his own life as a regular human being, but still talking out that thing of like, I still want to be able to help people. Like, I still have these abilities, but I don't want that to interfere with me having a proper human life.
Oh, yeah.
So it's great moments with all this stuff. And then, of course, we cut to the big Lex Luthor ball that's happening. And we get the introduction of Lex Luthor, played here by John Shea. So, what do you reckon of John Shea's interpretation of this character?
Oh, I love it. I really, really like it. In fact, I mean, I know Smallville comes years later, but I could totally see the character of Lex from Smallville, the way it was portrayed there, turning into this Lex. You know, like it's just a great portrayal. Now, I love the Christopher Reeve movies, but like Lex Luthor in there is not this Lex Luthor. You know, he's much campier in the original movies. You know, this was before the reinvention, of course, of Superman. Like he was reinvented in the was it 80s with John Byrne did this miniseries called Man of Steel. Like I have these comics, you know, I've had these comics for years and love his take on the whole reinvention. You know, it's kind of what led into this interpretation of Lois and Clark. And like the way Lex Luthor is not just like this crazy mad scientist bent on getting, you know, all the power in the world, but he's more of a subdued businessman, you know, like where all his stuff, his illegal things are hidden so far away that you wouldn't be able to find unless you really, really try to dig. You know, if you really try to dig, you're probably going to end up dead, so you don't do it, you know? I love this version of Lex Luthor, and I love what John Shea does with it as well.
I have to say this from the get-go, is that the character is not bald.
Right.
Immediately, they're telling us we're kind of steering away from that old archetype of Lex
Right.
Luthor, the evil bald guy.
Right.
Who, yeah, he's a bit campy and he's centered on world domination. The character still has that, you know, this fixation of wanting to control the world and have unlimited power. That has to be there because he's going to face off against Superman at every turn, who has ultimate power. He's the personification of ultimate power.
Yeah.
So yeah, the character still has to have that. But you're right, he sort of still keeps that hidden, and you really have to go looking for it. And of course, Superman knows about it, but that's what makes Lex so devious,
yeah, exactly.
is that he can keep it hidden.
Now, I don't know how much you know, like, because he does, like, later on in the season, they do take care of that whole bald thing. I don't know if you remember or not. That does come into play a little bit. Actually, I can't remember if it's this season or next season, but yeah, it does. At some point, it comes into play, you know, and you do see the whole bald thing come into play. You know, I didn't mind that he had hair. I thought he looked cool. You know, I thought he looked great, and like it's fine because you know, like in the comics, he did have hair originally. It depends on what. You know, what timeline you're talking about. But when he first appeared, he had hair. You know, he had like red hair, you know, back in the old golden age or whatever. He had red hair, but eventually falls out, you know, if you follow the Superboy timeline, because Superboy did something to try to save him and it caused his hair to fall out, you know. So he did have hair originally. And then even in even the newest one that's coming out this week, of course, he has hair, as we see in the previews and stuff like that. So I assume that they're going to work that into the movie as well at some point or in the future movie. And, you know, like I said, they do here for this show, they do work it in eventually. Oh, and it was worked in the Christopher Reeve movies as well. You know, he had hair, but then at one point he pulls off the wig, you know, and he's bald and the greatest criminal mastermind.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they did the same in Superman Returns as well.
That's right. Oh yeah, that's right. Forgot
where
about
he was wearing a wig. It was like he'd married some old dying woman. Yeah, and as soon as she's dead, it's like the wig comes off and the wedding ring comes off and off he goes.
Exactly. Yeah, so it's all good. It's all good. It's good to have hair.
It's an interesting sort of way of like Clark getting into this investigative reporter role because he kind of fumbles a bit.
Yeah.
You know, because Lois is all about getting the interview with Lex, and he just ruins that for her.
I know, I didn't understand that. I'm like, come on, man. Like, she's dancing with him, getting the inside scoop, and you know, really seem to be working up towards, you know, getting together. And, like, he's like, can I cut in? I'm like, what are you doing? Come on, man. She's working here.
Yeah, but she doesn't stay mad for too long either. Because he cuts in and she's like, damn it, you know, I've been trying to get an interview with Lex Luthor for a year. Oh, well, let's just dance a bit then.
Well, then what I thought was weird is why, like, right after that scene, they start snooping around Luthor's place. Which, I don't know, like, we know that Lex Luthor has, you know, evil intentions. But, like, in the story, like, don't they just know that Lex Luthor is just, like, a mysterious businessman? Like, he doesn't like to give interviews. Like, there seemed to be no suspicions that he was doing anything wrong. But then they start snooping around. Or were they just, like, saying, were they actually genuinely just like, oh, let's go see what this guy's all about?
Yeah, it was a bit weird, because it did seem more like, you know, let's quietly go through his stuff. Like, go over there and start going through drawers.
Yeah, it's like, what?
And, of course, he immediately shows up.
Yes.
And, you know, he thinks he's, like, because he's got this dagger, and he's pointing it at Clark, right?
Oh,
but then he sort of, like, goes into the history of it and stuff like that, to which Clark counters the fact that he already knows what this is, you know? It's like, you're not the only person around here who can appreciate these, you know, fine antiquities or whatever.
Exactly.
I know about this stuff too, even though I'm just a lowly reporter. And of course he throws out this thing of like, come and check out my view. I like the idea that people have to look up to see me. It's devious without being devious.
That was good.
And of course Clark is onto it. So Lex just comes off as like super pretentious.
Oh yeah.
And Clark is just like, yeah, I know you. I know what's going on here. But yeah, I think Clark holds his own against Lex Luthor. And then Lex ushers them all out and he makes the big announcement that he is going to save the space program with his own space station Luthor.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, you can just tell how far up himself he is. Like, he's not even going to, like, donate money to say, like, let's save the Prometheus program. No. Let's just do it again and call it Space Station Luthor.
Because I have the money, so let's do it.
I'm that powerful. So, yeah, he's just exerting power all over the place. And this is where we get a weird scene.
Yeah.
He's got this like, manservant guy, Asabi.
Yes.
Who sends a cobra into the room. It's like he's laying by the fire with a cigar, just being happy about how powerful and rich he is.
Yes.
And Asabi sicks this cobra on him, and he stares it down. So, what do you make of this?
This was, I remember watching it, and I was like, why is he crying? What's going on? You know, like, I thought that was a little bit strange that he started crying. I thought maybe that was like, I don't know what they were trying to go for there. I mean, I understand they're trying to show that he is like so powerful that he has to have these very dangerous situations, you know, pushed upon him in order to actually enjoy his life. The crying thing was a little bit odd to me. I was like, that's different. I don't know.
I kind of took it that it was more that he stared this cobra down, so he wasn't blinking. Mm-hmm. So that's why his eyes started to water. He stared it down, even though it was so painful for him to do it.
Oh, that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I could see that.
But it shows that he is just power hungry.
Yeah.
He definitely enjoys power and the fact that he can stare down this poisonous cobra.
Exactly.
And he thanks Asabi too, you know?
Like, I was trying to figure out, like, is this trying to show us that he's not just, like, one-dimensional evil, that he has, like, other levels of sensitivity, and that's why he's crying, you know, like, it just, I don't know. I couldn't figure it out. And, you know, I just, like I said, I just put it all down to the fact that he's just, you know, so powerful. This is what he needs, you know, in order to feel, you know, really powerful, if he can just get these dangerous situations to be in. I wasn't sure about the tear, but yeah, you know, staring it down, you know, keeping his eyes open, maybe that's what it was. Like, I even looked it up. Like, I tried to look it up and, you know, see other explanations, but I didn't see anything that said, this is why he cries.
Yeah, I think that's the best explanation for it. You know, we get this other thing, too, about a guy trapped down a manhole that Clark goes and saves. Again, just setting up that thing of, you know, wanting to find a way to use his powers to help people, but, you know, he's out there doing it at the moment and people are recognizing him. He has to come up with excuses like, that guy's delirious. How was I down there saving him? I've been here with you the whole time.
Exactly.
And we also get a drop line from Jimmy as well. He has managed to gather up all of Dr. Platt's report, and he's going to take it over to his friends at Star Labs.
Yeah, Star Labs.
To Warner Labs, which I thought was interesting. That Star Labs plays a big part in The Flash.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a big part of The Flash.
Yeah, just dropping all these little DC things here and there.
You know, they don't do it as much in this show as they do it now. Like, when you're watching The Arrow, you're watching The Flash, you know, any of those, the modern shows, they drop in little hints like that all over the place. It's like in this one here, they do put them in here and there, but they're not as abundant as they are in today's shows. It's almost like they know that the people today watching just will eat that stuff up. Back then, they're just, we'll throw it in once in a while.
Yeah, and not being a comic book reader myself, I don't think I ever got that. If I didn't watch the Flash TV series now,
right,
I would never have picked up that was a reference to something that already existed in the DC universe.
Right. Well, see, that's why I looked up that Professor Carlton that he mentioned, and like I know later on they mentioned like street names, and some of the street names are like names of like Superman artists or Superman writers, things like that. Right. So they do drop those in, but they're really subtle. You know, they're just sort of thrown in there. And unless you're familiar with it, you know, and behind the workings of the comics, then you'd be like, oh, well, whatever.
Yeah, and of course, you know, all our listeners out there, if you guys are picking up on stuff, you know, we do encourage feedback. We're going to give out that info at the end. So feel free to, you know, throw out stuff that you notice in episodes or whatever. Reach out to us and tell us this stuff. We can't catch everything.
We can't catch every little reference because, after all, we're no Superman.
But we do live for that stuff at the same time. Yeah. When you hear about this stuff in the background, you're like, oh my god, that's so clever. I love it. This is where we get the reveal that Luthor and Baines are in cahoots with each other about sabotaging Prometheus.
Yes.
And this is really the big setup of how devious Luthor is. You know, he draws people in to do his evil bidding and kind of leaves them holding the bag, as it were. Yeah.
Well, he makes them think that they're doing it like that they're the ones that are doing it, like they're the ones in charge, you know, when really he's always in control. You know, it might seem like he's relinquished control at some point and that you're in charge, but you're not really. He's the one who's doing it.
Exactly. He's very good at talking people into stuff. He can talk a big game pretty much and make sure that he is never actually implicated in any of the activity. You know, Lois and Clark are working a bit late as well. And Lois just mentions that she might be a bit hungry. So Clark says, oh, you know, I know a good Chinese food place. Yeah. And he flies all the way to China and gets some food. I thought this was actually pretty cool. You know, he brings back that food and, you know, she's like, oh my God, this is like the best Chinese food ever.
That would be the coolest thing. Like if you're able to fly like that, if you could fly at super speed, you know, like why wouldn't you? Like if you knew the best pizza was at this place in Chicago at, you know, 4th and Main or whatever, why wouldn't you just fly over there, get it and bring it back? I know I'd be doing that.
It's all that stuff as well about, you know, he brings it back and she's like, oh, it's still hot, you know? So it's just showing how quick he is. And the one thing which I think is like common knowledge these days, maybe not so much back in the early 90s, but the fortune cookie is not a Chinese thing. It's Chinese American.
Right.
So yeah, the fact that she's got a fortune cookie there, you know, still they drop that thing like it's in Chinese. Like why would it not be in Chinese?
Right,
so she can't read it. But of course Clark can read Chinese.
Of course, world traveler.
So, you know, a little knock at the episode there, but I'm going with it still.
Yeah.
They decide that they're going to head off and see Dr. Platt, and they find him dead of an apparent suicide.
Yes.
Cheap effects. Again. Like, it's this thing of like the electricity coursing across his body, like a very obvious like post effect of the early 90s.
Oh yeah.
And they put it in everywhere, like running up his legs, up his arms, even between like the spiky hairs on his head and stuff. And I was like, just overdone with that electrical effect there.
Right.
But, you know, the mystery deepens. They know something's going on. They're pretty sure that Platt didn't kill himself. This is pretty much where we get like the first brainstorming of the idea of Clark getting himself an outfit or a disguise. You know, he's very upset that he couldn't save Dr. Platt, and of course, you know, the stuff that happened with like the manhole guy and, you know, the bus on the street. So this is like we get that first line of like, I need something, an outfit, a disguise or something. A good little just like precursor to, you know, when we're actually going to get into that. He's actually on the phone with his parents at the time. He's just gotten out of the shower. He's in a towel. And Lois shows up and he answers the door and she just like she really just fumbles her words.
You got a little bit of eye candy here for the ladies and for some guys too. So there you go.
Yeah, again. And I don't know, it's a strange scene too, because of course like he's like, oh, excuse me, I just got to go and get changed. And she notices like all the junk food and stuff in his cupboards. And then he comes back. It's been like 30 seconds. And he's fully dressed. His hair's dry. She sort of tries to like think about that in her head, like how did he get dressed so quickly, but she doesn't say anything. She's just like, that was weird, maybe more time passed than I thought had or something. You know, she's not immediately going to jump to this guy is like super fast or something like that, but yeah, she's like totally confused anyway about the fact that his cupboards and fridge are full of junk food, and he's got abs of steel. You could tell that she was starting to like him as a person, but now she's gonna get a bit physically attracted to him as well.
Yes, exactly.
And they end up meeting with Dr. Platt's wife to find out what happened to her husband, because she also doesn't believe that he had committed suicide. And she brings up this whole thing about how the space station Prometheus was going to help their daughter.
Was in a wheelchair.
And, you know, the things that they were going to do up there, you know, working in a zero gravity environment was going to, they're going to do all kinds of scientific research up there. So, you know, it was a big thing. So she's, you know, obviously upset about her husband's death, but she's also very upset that something could be happening to the Prometheus project, which is, going to impact greatly on her daughter's life.
Right. It's a bit odd that they would take the daughter up to the space station now, I'm just going to say, a bit unrealistic, I think,
Yeah, I don't know. It is sort of leaping technology forward a bit, for something which is very obviously set in the 90s. Like, they're not shying away from that.
Right.
They do leap technology forward a fair bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. It is a bit strange that there's a little girl going up to this thing. Not to mention that this space station exists in the first place.
Right.
But they do make the announcement that the Prometheus project is going to go ahead, regardless of the failure they had with the exploding shuttle and everything. It's like the UN says that this project deserves to go ahead. So Lex is just pissed.
They're like, thanks, Lex, but no thanks.
Star Labs confirms what Dr. Platt had been telling them, that it was definitely sabotage that had ruined it in the first place. And then Lois heads out to have dinner with Lex. She's actually getting her interview.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting scene, I think. She's very, into the moment of interviewing him. Like, she's very professional and all that. Lex is the one that's trying to give her the hard sell.
Yeah, he's ultra suave.
Yeah.
Like, how do you like dinner? Is the food all to your liking? That type of thing. Yeah. Well, it was set up, it was set up earlier when they first met. He didn't know who she was. Like, she was not on his radar at all, because when she first shows up, she's like, you've been ignoring my calls, and he turns around and he's like, oh, well, that's a mistake. That won't happen again. Like, he didn't realize that she was, this beautiful young lady that he could woo, so now, he's very intrigued by that. So he's going to, like you said, give her the hard sell. And, with Dr. Baines, she was asking him, do you like her? And I just find she might be useful. I like it. It's setting up not just like in the comics. In the comics, there's always a love triangle. It's, Lois, Clark, and Superman. That's how it was back in the Golden Age. It's different now. But now we've got this love rectangle? Love square?
Love square.
Love square with Lex, Lois, Clark, and Superman. So that's what we got going forward now. It's not just a love triangle now. It's love square. I like love rectangle. I like that.
And I do like the fact that the way that they're going to set up Lex's, obsession with Lois is that she doesn't want to be with him. So in a way, that's going to make him want her more.
Because he is the most powerful man, so he wants what he can't have.
Exactly. So, she gets to the point where she's like, I'm just here to interview you. This is what I do. I am a professional here. And when I get in that mindset, that's kind of the way I am. She tries to get up and leave, and he's like, well, no dessert. And she says, well, I never have dessert. She's just saying anything to get out of there.
Exactly.
To which he responds with, well, you don't know what you're missing. He's like, he has an answer for everything,
Oh, he does, yeah.
Even when she manages to get away and say, like, I'm leaving, he still drives her home, goes with her to her house and drops her off.
And gives her a freaking hard kiss, too, right there on the steps. It shows she's susceptible to his charms, to a point.
Yeah. But Clark's being a bit of a stalker.
Oh, yeah, he is. Super stalker Clark, he's across the way. And then, like, when she goes up to her apartment, he, like, flies up there and hangs out next to the window, It's like, oh, boy, come on now. But, if you had the power to fly and to see through windows and other, articles of clothing, you might be tempted a little bit to do things that you shouldn't do. I'm just saying.
It does give you, like, those little moments of, she's talking with Lucy again.
Yes.
She's talking about, she just had this date with Lex Luthor and stuff like that. And Lucy says, well, for all you know, Mr. Right could be right out that window. And, of course, Clark is, like, right there. And you're like, okay. Yes. Not so thinly veiled there. I get where you're going with this.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he has been a bit of a stalker there, it is a bit, it's cute.
It is. It's well done.
But, Perry decides that he's not going to publish this story of theirs.
This was a good scene, though. This is a very good scene. The way he paces it out.
They were so confident with this story. They were so happy. We're pretty sure that, Platt's story is correct. We've got this evidence with Star Labs and all that. This is a solid lock. We can run this story. And Perry just, like, rips it down. It's just like, he probably didn't commit suicide. And this information came from a man who was discredited from the scientific community. Yeah, he just rips the whole story to shreds. And they're just like, why did we not see this coming. Like,
exactly.
yeah, we do need to do more research here.
Yes.
I don't know. This is actually kind of weird because they decide they need more proof, right? I guess maybe
Right.
Lois feels like she wants to do this and get the credit for it, and that's
Of
why
course,
she
yeah,
doesn't
that's
take
what it
Clark
is.
with her, right? That's why she takes Jimmy, because
Exactly.
Jimmy can take photographs and stuff like that, but she can still get
Yes.
the story and take the credit.
Yep.
And Lex is trying to tell Baines that, you know, don't worry about her, don't do anything, you're just going to jeopardize the mission. And of course, Baines is just like jealous as all hell. So she's going to take out Lois Lane with her goon.
Yep. Her goon, who has no like lines. He just sort of motions and grunts at one point, I think.
Yeah, it sort of just creeps up behind Lois and grabs at her.
Yes.
But she holds her own.
She does. She
If
has
Baines
some-
didn't show up with the gun,
I know. She
her
must
and
have some
Jimmy
kind
would
of
have gotten
brick in
away.
that purse of hers or something. It's like boom, and he's down for the count.
it's actually quite funny because Perry calls this like staff meeting, like
Right.
a weekly staff meeting to see what everyone's doing. And Clark's like, you know, I'm kind of worried about Lois. I'm just going to go and find out what's going on with her. So he's going to go and fly out the window in this storage closet. And Perry comes in. He's just like, oh, they told me you were in here, you know. So when are you going to come out of the closet?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, in a minute, sir.
Yeah.
He's like,
Soon. Okay.
he's just so confused why he went in here in the first
I know.
place. To which, I don't know, he could have just said, like, you know, we're in the office, it's a bit stuffy, I kind of like to come in here, there's a window, I can
Right.
sit down and
Yes.
think or something, get some fresh air. He could have said anything, but he turned into this weird conversation.
If I remember correctly, we're going to get more of those weird explanations for why he's doing something that isn't like normal, or why he was missing, you know, like why he wasn't there when they needed him to be there. And so, yeah, there's going to be more of that coming if I remember correctly. I liked it. I thought the scene was great. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. And of course, like, Clark, like, tracks down Lois, and he just comes barreling in to be like, what do you think you're doing?
Don't let them go. I'll
What
nothing.
will I do?
Nothing I can do.
Yeah, Lois and Jimmy are like right there. Well, Jimmy's unconscious, but Lois
Right.
is right there.
She like
So,
rolls her
yeah.
eyes. Yeah.
He's got no choice but to pretend to get captured.
Exactly.
They sort of have a bit of a heart-to-heart.
Oh yeah, this was nice. This was nice.
It's also pretty funny too because he's pretty much, you know, he's about to say like, oh, you know, somehow I've managed to like break the lock off or something like that. But before he can say that, she just starts like coming out with all this stuff
Oh,
about
yeah.
her life and, you know, she's lonely and blah, blah, blah. She goes like right into it. So he's just like, all right, I'll just let you talk for a moment. I'll get all this stuff on you. I'll let you open up to me. But then, of course, Baines comes in and
Yes.
to use a parlance from our previous rewatch, she goes full digs.
Full digs. For those of you who have not followed us from Sliders, our Sliders rewatch, that when we say full digs, that refers to a character who comes in and explains everything that you've been wondering about to the characters, everything that you need to know to set the situation up. That's what full digs means. So.
And this is like a typical bad guy to a superhero
Oh yeah,
kind
definitely.
of thing. To come in and unveil your entire plan
Exactly.
before I kill you.
Before I set you up in this way to kill you that there's a small chance you might escape from. It's like from the old Batman 66 series, you know, I'm going to put you in this elaborate death trap that will kill you instantly in about 5 minutes, you know.
Yeah, James Bond is also really big
Oh,
for
yeah.
this early
That's
James
right.
Bond stuff. Tell them everything about her plans. Don't tell them anything about Lex Luthor's involvement, of
No.
course. And then, yeah, put these 2 taps of chemicals on a slow drip that when they combine, they will explode.
Yes.
And unfortunately, 2 nosy reporters get caught in the crossfire.
Yes.
So yeah, it is a very stereotypical bad guy thing to do. But of course, Clark, as soon as Baines is gone, Clark just like busts out and saves them and stuff like that. And he has to like fly away from the thing, to which he's just like, oh, you know, the blast
Yes.
pushed us away, so we're all good. Don't worry about it.
Yes.
And then Lex explodes Baines' helicopter. Why wouldn't he?
Exactly.
He'd been planning to do this anyway.
Yeah, she's a loose end, you know.
Exactly. She's outlived her usefulness, so
Yep.
let's get rid of her. And then, you know, they reveal the story of the shuttle. They go back over the shuttle with a fine-tooth comb, find that, yes, indeed, these cooling, heating system things were reversed or whatever. And everyone's getting praised. Lois and Clark are getting praised for this big story.
Yep.
And this is where we get a awesome costume-making montage.
This was fun. Yeah, this was fun.
massive montage back to I Need a Hero.
Yes.
And his mother helping him put some stuff together.
It was really cool. Someone said there was a reference to a Daredevil type costume in there where it covers his face. And I guess I saw that. I mean, of course, the biggest one that you saw was the Captain America one with the stripes.
With the stars and stripes.
Yeah, that was great. That was awesome. Just in another dimension, you know, he could have been Captain America, you know.
Not directly saying we're referencing Marvel here.
Exactly. It was a good little reference there. I liked it.
Exactly. And like, you know, Captain America, he's America's superhero.
Exactly.
He's America's Boy Scout. And Superman was often slated as, you know, for liberty, truth in the American way, I think, was it?
Yeah, truth, justice in the American way. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, he was also a very big, you know, America poster
Yes,
child.
exactly. In fact, there's a comic that came out in I think it was the 2000s. It's from the DC and Marvel had a team up, and what happened at the end of the team up, you know, spoiler alert, the two universes got mixed together into what they called the amalgam universe. So it was some characters from DC, some characters from Marvel jammed together. And what happened was Captain America got jammed together with Superman. So it was a blonde guy in a Captain America costume, but I think he had like a cape, and his shield was an S shield instead of the Captain America shield, and it was their two characters mixed together.
That's awesome.
It was neat. Like, I think they've collected it into a trade paperback, so you could read all the stories. It was really quite fun to see characters from both companies melded together into one, and how the backstory goes, and how their supporting cast, you know, appeared and everything. It was neat. There was some good amalgamations. I'm trying to remember some of the other ones. I just can't at the moment. That's the one that sticks out to me. I think there was a Spider Boy, and it was Superboy and Spider-Man put together. It was neat to check out, you know, so definitely check it out if you're interested in that, seeing the two iconic, you know, American pro characters pushed together into one.
Yeah, I'm surprised though that they didn't sort of try to explain why they went with that costume. You know, the skin tight blue with the underwear on the outside, pretty much.
Right.
It was just like this was just the style we came up with. Whereas I think everybody knows that the Superman costume comes from the old strongman.
Right.
You know, in the circus, he would always have the underpants on the outside.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It was still a pretty good montage, and of course they land on the idea, and they talk about the cape. You know, the mother's like, no, the cape will look great when you're flying, and
yes.
you know, look fantastic, but it's missing something. And of course, you know, they get the S from the blanket he was wrapped in.
Yes.
That's always been the story. I think they stick with that.
Mm-hmm.
In Men of Steel, they come up with this whole House of L
right
symbol and what the symbol means and stuff like that.
Which was sort of in the that was in the Christopher Reeves movies as well. You know, like when they're on Krypton, you see a bunch of other people from Krypton with different symbols. You know, so there's precedent for it.
They end up seeing on the TV that the next shuttle is going to launch.
Right.
Lois is on there. She actually wanted to go up with the Prometheus, but Perry was like, no press. They'll never let you in there.
Right.
So she snuck on board. She was actually going to go up to space.
It's easy to see how the space shuttle could be sabotaged. If she could sneak on, it's not that hard to think that criminals would be able to get on there and sabotage the thing originally.
Exactly. There's a bomb.
Yes.
Which is timed perfectly with the countdown for launch.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, while they're sort of watching this on the TV as well, Clark kind of throws out that thing about the glasses, like people won't know it's me because of the glasses, right?
Well, even before that, I gotta say, I love his father's reaction when he comes out. It's just like his double take. It's just like this is pretty good. It was really good.
Yeah. That's my boy.
Yeah. But yeah, his glasses thing, you know, like I mean, I understand what he's saying. Because they're not, when they see Clark, they're not thinking, oh, that's Superman. They're just seeing Clark, you know? So they're not looking for a connection there between the two people. So they won't see the connection because they're not looking for it.
So it's good that they sort of just address these issues from the get-go.
That was another eye roll thing too from his father, you know, the way, you know, he's like, I don't think people will recognize it's me. And his father's like, whatever. That little look in his, I thought that was cool.
Yeah, taking the point of view of the people watching,
yeah.
But you know, this is giving Superman his first outing, and he busts in, grabs the bomb, and eats it. So what do you think this as Superman's big entrance to the world?
It was a little, I don't know, I found it a little cheesy. I found the eating the bomb thing like, oh, well, okay, I guess, why not?
Actually, eating the bomb, I think, was maybe an edge too far into cheesy. Like we saw him like kick that rock into space before with his father. Like he could have done that. He could just thrown it up into space or something like that.
Yeah.
He didn't have to eat it. But I guess he does need to display his strength to Lois as well.
Right. Well, yeah, that's the whole episode is all about that. Like slowly, one by one, revealing all the things that he can do.
Yeah, and of course setting him up as the good guy, because he comes out and he has that moment with Platt's daughter, and then helping them get into space because they say, "Oh, we can't. The shuttle will never get to Prometheus now because we've used the burners.
Right.
It's a scrub." So he lifts the shuttle up into space and he's set up as the good guy. He's there to help.
Mm-hmm.
He ends up flying Lois back to the Daily Planet. And Kat has a great line here. I never thought I'd see this. What, a flying man? No, Lois Lane literally swept off her feet.
Yep.
And of course the whole thing too. What does the S stand for? Superman. So Lois gets to coin Superman, which I think is also very good.
Oh yeah, and that's been done before as well. That's precedent for that.
We're going to wrap the whole thing up with Superman paying a visit to Lex Luthor.
Yeah, this was good.
This is a good way to sort of wrap up this episode. I mean, there's still a little bit of a teaser at the end too, with Lois swooning over Superman to Clark. But yeah, this whole thing about this is it. Superman, he has unveiled himself to the world, and you know who he's going to go after? Lex Luthor.
Yeah,
he knows what's going on.
Exactly. Yeah, it was really well done. I like his delivery when he's like, "Well done, Superman." The whole delivery was just perfect, spot on. Loved it.
He was showing his hand a little bit though when he said, "If you ever need to find me, just look up."
Right.
I mean, he said that to Lois and Clark.
Exactly.
So, it's a cool line.
Mm-hmm.
I get why he says it, but he could really just be, showing his hand of who he actually is to Lex Luthor at that moment.
I think in my mind, I'm thinking he's just so hungry, full of power that conversation was beneath him. He's probably said that to other people as well, I bet. Like all the women that he brings over to woo, I'm sure he's, he's, let me show you my view, and very impressive, so I bet he just sort of he didn't realize, he just sort of just throws that off a lot, that line.
But all in all, I think this is a terrific pilot episode. Really sets up the characters nicely and makes you want to come back week after week to watch this show.
Definitely.
I still don't believe it. A man who flies.
Jeez, it's all over the TV.
Oh, Jimmy, don't believe everything you see on TV. I'll tell you one thing, though. Whoever pulled off a hoax like this is great shades of Elvis.
I see it, but I don't believe it.
What, a man who flies?
No, Lois Lane. Finally, literally swept off her feet. Too bad he's an alien.
I think considering the fact that I saw you first, you owe me an exclusive.
Is that the rule?
Well, no. But I'd appreciate it very much. Wait a minute! How do I find you?
I'll be around. Real smooth.
Did you find out what the S stands for?
Superman.
All right, so let's get into our quote vote.
All right.
What's everybody standing around for? This is a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet? Or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette?
Am I making myself perfectly clear?
So we put this out on the Facebook page every week. We use the hashtag quote vote, so it's easy to find if you haven't liked our Facebook page or anything. We do encourage you to come and like our Facebook page, though. Mm-hmm. A lot of great people interacting over there. But yeah, we put up a few quotes from the episodes each week, and we let you guys vote on it. And the winner gets the coveted quick impressions treatment from us.
Yes. For those of you who did not follow us over from the Sliders Rewatch, Quick Impressions is where Cory and I do our very accurate and movie accurate impressions of famous actors and recreate a scene from the episode. They're that good, let me tell you.
Yeah. So we didn't get a lot. I mean, this is our first one, but a few people chimed in on what they thought was the best, and we had a clear winner this week. So Let's get into it. Cue the music.
There's a knock at the door. Bobcat Goldthwait answers, wearing only a towel. Sean Connery is standing in the doorway. I said 9. I thought you'd be naked. Ready.
I was on the phone. I'll be out in a jiff.
Bobcat walks into the next room, and Sean looks in his kitchen cupboards. Bobcat enters again. We'd better be going, so explain something to me. You eat like an 8-year-old, and you look like Mr. Hardbody. What's your secret? Can I have it? And scene. Little subtext there to "Can I have it?" I tried to embody that in my portrayal of Mr. Connery.
All right, so let's check out our back issues and/or old forums.
Right, so we have these old forums that we used for the Sliders Rewatch, where we got to got to read about what people were thinking when episodes of Sliders came out, and I decided to search those old forums, see if there's anything about Lois and Clark when it came out, and there is some stuff in there. It's not as easy to find as the Sliders stuff was, but there is some stuff in there about Lois and Clark. So for the pilot, this is what people were thinking back in '93. They said, well, very dodgy special effects. The acting was okay, but the plot wasn't too good at all. It looked as if they couldn't decide what direction the plot was going. But I'll give it a few weeks before dropping out, before it drops out of the ratings completely. So they weren't too hot on it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Another person said, well, the humor is what really saved this episode, the little funny bits. That's why they stuck with the whole pilot. Someone was saying that apparently there were some scenes cut from our version, the one they saw in Britain, over in England, because the one they saw was only 75 minutes long. So they did cut out quite a bit for their version. And then this is where people started talking back and forth about how the different versions had aired. Someone said that the original pilot was supposed to be an hour and 40, but then the last 20 minutes of the hour was going to have a meet the cast and crew of Lois and Clark that was hosted by Joan London. So I guess that was when it first aired. They had a Joan London special afterward, and stuff about there was a special flying, the special effects of flying segment that they tacked on there as well. So that I don't remember that when it aired. Maybe I just didn't even watch that part. Maybe I just watched the original pilot, or thinking about, I might have watched it when they reran it in December, and that might have been when I jumped on. I'm trying to remember, but yeah. So that was for the original showing, and then someone said, yeah, well, supposedly the 1-hour installment of the pilot is going to have some added scenes into it. So they were kind of debating back then. This is '93, so the beginnings of the forums and the internets and things like that. People getting online in more numbers discussing it. And then one person said, casting leaves a little to be desired. Clark looks like he's 22, and Lois looks like she's 30. And by the way, did you guys notice Lois is the girl from Seinfeld who didn't get the breast implants? So they weren't too hot on it, when it first aired. Like the initial reaction was not great, at least from what we saw in these old forums. There could have been more support elsewhere, but yeah, for these old forums, it was like, yeah, it's all right, but we'll see what happens.
It's interesting, actually, because we can look back on it, in retrospect and say, we love this show. It's a great show, but it's interesting getting that perspective of people who have just watched the pilot for the first time,
right?
And like you said, it seems like a few of them are like, it's okay, we'll stick with it for a bit, we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm interested to see what they say going forward, if I could find more stuff for this back issue segment. I think it'd be cool because it does get a lot better, and it does get its footing and really start to take off.
Very cool. Very interesting. All right. So just a quick reminder that we always have a feedback segment in our shows here at the Rewatch Podcast. So for Lois and Clark, we're going to call this our personal ads section. Sticking with the newspaper theme.
Yes.
But yeah, we really encourage you guys to send us your feedback. We're going to give our contact details at the end of the show very shortly. But yeah, we want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think of the episodes? What are your experiences with Lois and Clark? So feel free to reach out, send us an email and all that stuff. All right, so on our next issue of the Lois and Clark Rewatch, we're going to be watching 2 episodes. This first episode, of course, was the feature-length pilot, so we kind of just reserve that just for that pilot. But next we're going to discuss the next 2 episodes of Lois and Clark, which are Strange Visitor from Another Planet and Never Ending Battle. So looking forward to that.
Yep, definitely. Well, that is it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/rewatchpodcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch, and follow the show on Twitter at rewatchpod. Don't forget, you can also visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has some of our favorite links there, such as zoomway.net, redboots.net, folc.wiki.com, and sliders.tv, plus links to our archive of film rewatch episodes.
And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it over to the rewatchpodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. It really helps the show out. And you can also help support all the great work we do here at the Rewatch Podcast by heading over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast and make a monthly contribution as little as $1. We're also up on YouTube. Just search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe. All right, so thank you for joining me for this episode 1 of Lois and Clark.
Of course.
It's been great talking about it, and I'm so stoked to be delving deeper into this TV
Oh, yeah.
show.
I can't wait to see the rest. It's been a long time, so yeah. It's cool.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, I'll just say until next time, they don't call them tights for nothing.
We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Roundelay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2016, The Rewatch Podcast.
Where are your beepers? We'll be in touch.
Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Corey.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Corey. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/rewatchpodcast.
Thanks, everyone.